Record. There we go. Awesome. Hey, I'm Jeff Wilkins. Again, this is the seminar on idolatry, and I'm glad you guys are here. Yesterday, what did we do? We basically asked one question, and that question was, why do we do the things we do? And we looked at the Bible's answer to that question, which is our hearts. We do what we do because of what's in our hearts. You and I were created worshipers. And so what we worship, according to Jesus, according to the Bible, is what directs what we think, we say, and we do. That's what we looked at yesterday. Today, I'm operating with a particular assumption, and that assumption is this: that you have concluded with me that idolatry is not a great thing. That you would like to actually change. Does the Bible offer us any hope that there is change? Absolutely. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to begin to think about how do you go about changing. And we're going to do that. This is just the first part. So this isn't the whole answer today. But the first thing that we need to think about is, how do you identify, how do you unearth idols in your life? Because we all have them. I want to start with an illustration, a story from my life. I mentioned yesterday, I think, that I can't hear out of my right ear. But I've not always not been able to hear out of my right ear. In fact, I could hear out of my right ear perfectly well until I was about 27, 28 years old. In the summer of 1991, I was a seminary student at Westminster Theological Seminary in Philadelphia, and some student friends of mine and I decided that we were going to go to the Jersey Shore for the weekend. So we went to the Jersey Shore, we swam, we did the boardwalk, we did all the stuff that you do at the Jersey Shore, and then we came back and started our studies. Well, it wasn't a week or two after that trip to the shore that my right ear sort of closed up. And what it felt like was, it felt like I had swimmer's ear. You know, like I felt like I had like this liquid in my ear, and when I sort of tipped my head, you would feel that liquid kind of go back and forth. You ever had swimmer's ear? It's a drag. So what did I do? Well, I went to the pharmacy and I bought a swimmer's ear kit. Now, if you've ever seen a swimmer's ear kit, you know that it comes with two things. It comes with this big rubber bulb, and it comes with these like chemical drops. And what you do is you put the drops in your ear and you lay there for 10 or 15 minutes, and then that's supposed to sort of soften the wax. And then you take this bulb, you fill it full of sort of warm water, you lean your head over the sink, and you sort of wash your ear out. And it's supposed to clear out any sort of waxy type stuff that might be the reason why you have swimmer's ear. So I go to the drugstore, I buy a swimmer's ear kit, I go home, I lay down on the couch, my wife puts a few drops of this solution in my ear, and I lay there for 15 minutes. When 15 minutes is up, I walk to the bathroom, I lean over the sink, my wife takes this bulb, fills it full of warm water, shoves it in my ear ever so gently, and she begins to sort of wash my ear out. What I expected was, after she sort of washed my ear out, I would look in the sink and I would see this big gob of just blah. She washes, I look, nothing. So she fills up the syringe, or the bulb again, she shoves it back in my ear, and she washes a little harder. I look, nothing. She washes again, nothing. She washes again, nothing. That afternoon, nothing happened. So what do? I think, well, it must have been the swimmer's ear kit, right? So I walk back to the drugstore the next day and I buy a different brand, because that's got to be what the problem is. And I go home and I go through the same procedure. Drops, wash, 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 nothing. Second thing you might need to know is that my mother is a nurse. And somewhere along the line, I was talking with my mother, and I told her I had swimmer's ear. And what that meant was from that moment on, every time I talked to my mother, she asked me the question, how's your ear? And I would say, oh, nothing's really changed. I'll take care of that in the future. Well, the summer ends and the fall begins. Classes begin. My swimmer's ear goes on the back burner. And I go to school. That's what you do when you're in seminary. You go to class. Don't really think much about it. Every time I talk to my mom, how's your ear? Oh, nothing's really changed. I'm going to do that. I'm going to take care of that next summer. Well, a year goes by, and I'm so dumb. I talk to my mom, and my mom says, how's your ear? And I say, oh, it's the same. Nothing's changed. And she says, something's going to change. I've made you an appointment with an ear, nose, and throat doctor, and you're going to go see him. Now, I'm like 28 years old, and the lesson of this little example is obey your mother. Even as a 28-year-old guy, you obey your mother. So I very dutifully go see this ear, nose, and throat guy. I walk into his office. I sit down. He gets out that little, whatever you call it, starts looking in my ear, looking in my ear, looking in my ear. And he goes, dude, I'm sure he didn't say dude. But he says, sir, you have a terrible ear infection in your right ear. Cool. Awesome. So he prescribes me these horse pills that are very expensive. And I know they're very expensive because I didn't have insurance, so I had to pay for them out of my own pocket. And it cost some serious jack. But I took these pills for 3 weeks. And after 3 weeks, I went back to see the doctor. I went back to see the doctor because nothing had seemed to change. So this doctor looks at my ear, and he says, the infection is gone. But you still have swimmer's ear? I said, yeah. So he decides we need to do some tests. So he puts me in this room where they put like headphones on, and they play beeps, and you're supposed to raise your hand when you hear something and all that kind of stuff. And we go through all of these tests, and he's left scratching his head. He's like, I have no idea what's going on. He says, so he ordered a CAT scan, which means they shove you in this tube and take pictures of your head for like 30 minutes. It's really not all that fun. It's pretty loud, even with a clogged up ear. And I get this CAT scan. Go home, because it takes time for that stuff to develop and whatever. About a week later, I get a phone call from the doctor's office. But here's the thing, it's not a nurse. It's the doctor. Now, I don't know if you've ever gotten a phone call after you've had work done at the doctor's office, but it is always a nurse. The nurse always calls you with the results. Hey, your test came back negative, you're fine. I pick up the phone, it's the doctor. Red flag. The doctor says, Jeff, I have good news and bad news. You don't have swimmer's ear. Awesome. What do I have? You have a tumor in your middle ear that is growing. It's wrapped around 3 of your nerves that run through your face. Now, if you were 65 years old, this is what my doctor says. He says, this is a very slow-growing tumor. If you were 65 years old, we wouldn't do anything. You would be dead long before this tumor would ever do anything to you. But since you're 28 years old, we need to do something. Because if we leave this tumor untreated, it's going to grow. And over time, it's going to sever these 3 nerves in your face. And what that's going to mean is you're going to lose control of the muscles in a half of your face. You potentially might not be able to speak, and you won't be able to swallow. I think for a minute, I'm going back to the drugstore to get a 3rd swimmer's ear kit. No. I think, what do? The doctor says we need to do surgery. So in August of 1992, I had surgery. University of Pennsylvania Hospital. It's a great hospital. I had really long hair. They gave me this perfect half mohawk. It was awesome. When I got out of surgery, I asked my wife if I could do the other side. She said, absolutely not. So they shaved this huge, perfect half mohawk, and they took a scalpel or whatever they use, and they literally sliced my head like this. If I cut my hair off, if I do a burr, I've got this amazing scar right here that makes me look like the axe murderer who kicks cats. It's unbelievable. And then, so they sliced me open, and they laid my head open. They pulled my face, it's like face off. They pulled my face forward, and then they spent 17 hours working in there. 17 hours. It's crazy. And here's the thing. That surgery saved my life. As long as I treated my ear as if I had swimmer's ear, I was in danger. I was in danger of having this tumor continue to grow, to have this tumor eventually sever these nerves in my face and actually eventually work itself into my brain. Untimely death. That's what I was looking at. But once my tumor was accurately diagnosed, I could get an accurate remedy. Now, I tell you that because I think it is a great principle. It's a great illustration of what I want us to think about today. And that is this, that an accurate diagnosis is the first step toward an accurate remedy. And here's the thing. That's not only true about tumors in your middle ear, but it's true about our hearts. If you look at this handout that you have, at the very top, there's a quote by these two guys named Paul Tripp and Tim Lane. Tim and I were classmates in school, and Paul's a friend, and they wrote this book. Listen to what they say. A diagnosis of what is wrong will determine what you think the cure is. If a doctor diagnoses an infection, she will prescribe an antibiotic. If she diagnoses cancer, she'll prescribe radiation or chemotherapy. The cure only works if the diagnosis is correct. If the diagnosis is wrong, the cure may lead to painful, even deadly consequences. When it comes to soul care, misdiagnosing a personal problem can also have deadly consequences. We need Scripture's clarity and insight into why we do the things we do if we are to find a lasting cure. What are Tripp and Lane saying? They're saying you've got to know what's going on in your heart if you want to wage war against the idols of your heart. Your idols are going to kill you, or you are going to kill them, but you cannot peacefully coexist. And the first step in the fight against the idols of our hearts is an accurate diagnosis. And that's what I want for us to think about today. What do we need to do in order to begin to understand what's going on in our hearts? What do we need to do in order to begin to understand, unearth, and identify the idols of our heart? Now, what we're going to talk about today is going to dovetail with what we said yesterday. One of the things we said yesterday is that every single person who has ever walked the face of the earth is a worshiper. Doesn't matter if you're Christian, Buddhist, Muslim, atheist, agnostic. Every single person is a worshiper. We all worship something. And according to Paul in Romans chapter 1, you either worship God or you worship something that God created, which is what the Bible describes as idols. We also saw yesterday at the very end that idolatry is not just the problem of people out there, but idolatry is a problem even for those of us in here who call Jesus Lord. That all of us struggle with idols. Remember what John said at the end of his letter, little children, keep yourselves from idols. The Apostle Paul says something interesting in Colossians. He says, put to death, he's writing this to Christians, put to death, therefore, what is earthly in you, sexual immorality, impurity, passion, desire, and covetousness. And then he says, which is idolatry. Christians struggle with idols. In fact, one thing I want to say, just a little side note here, is somebody came up to me after yesterday, either the first or the second session, said, hey, is there something out there I could read? This book by Tim Keller, Counterfeit Gods, is a great book, very accessible. You guys could all read it and benefit from him. And I'm going to be using it a lot today. And in fact, I'm going to use it right now. Tim Keller in Counterfeit Gods says this. He says, I am not asking whether or not you have rival gods. I assume that we all do. They are hidden in every one of our hearts. John Calvin said that the human heart is an idol factory. You and I, whether you're a believer or not, worship idols. That's what the Bible teaches us. And what that means is that if we want to begin to really deal with our idols, we've got to understand what's going on in our heart. We've got to be able to identify what's going on in our heart. There's just one problem. The prophet Jeremiah says this in Jeremiah 17. He says, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it? So the million-dollar question is, if that's the case, if we all struggle with spiritual heart problems, but our hearts are desperately wicked and evil and sick, so screwed up that we can't understand it, what are we to do? How do you begin to understand what's going on in your heart? How can you discern your idols? Well, think for a second about the passage that you have in front of you from James. I made reference to it yesterday. In James chapter 4, James asks a question. What causes quarrels and fights among you? Is it not this, that your passions are at war within you? A couple questions. Does James tell us that these passions that are at war within us, does James tell us that they are bad passions? That they are evil passions? That they are satanic passions? Is that what he says? No. He says that these are just passions. There is a way in the Greek language to talk about evil passions. In this passage, James does not talk about evil passions. He talks about passions. Second question is this. Are passions in and of themselves evil or wrong? Is it bad to be passionate? What do you think? No. One of my professors said this. He said, when you stop having passion, when you stop desiring, you are dead. We all have passions. There's nothing wrong with passions. So what's James talking about in this passage? What is wrong with this passion, or what's wrong with this heart where these passions are at war with one another? Well, look at verse 2. James says this. He says, you desire and do not have, so you murder. You covet and cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. The word that is translated in the ESV as desire is a Greek word that means inordinate desire or over-desire. And what that means is that what's wrong with our hearts isn't that we desire something, but it's that we desire something too much, which fits very well with what we talked about yesterday about idolatry and worship. That idolatry very often is taking something that is good, something that is God created, and letting it morph into something that it becomes a god, it becomes an idol, that we want this thing more than we want God. It's an over-desire. So here's the question, very practically speaking. How do you know if something good in your life has morphed into something godlike in your life? How do you know if something good has morphed into an idol? Well, I think the easiest way for us to answer that question is this. You can know that a good thing has morphed into a God thing in your life when you are willing to disobey God's clearly revealed will in order to get that good thing. Example, I'm a father. I have 3 kids. Micah, who is a girl, I know we gave our boys names. Sorry about that. Micah, who is 18, going to college in the fall. Asher, who is 16, 10th grader. Anna Grace, who is 13, and she's going into 8th grade. Now, I would like for you guys all to think that I'm a good dad, that I love my kids, and that what I want for them is their best. And I do. I want my kids to grow up and be responsible. What parent wouldn't? I want my kids to grow up and be respectful. I want my kids to grow up and be polite. I want my kids to grow up and be kind. Do I sound like a dad? Yeah, I sound like a dad. Here's the thing. Those good things, respect, kindness, good manners, responsibility, those things oftentimes in my life morph into God things, which means they become bad things. How do I know when those good things have morphed into idols? When my children act irresponsibly? When my children are cruel and mean to one another? When my children are disrespectful to me or to their mother? When my children are unkind? I explode with anger. I mean, I don't kick them like I do my cat, but in a sense, in my heart, I do. When I explode, I know that something that is good has become too important. You see, God has called me in His Word to love my family, to shepherd their hearts, to care for them, to be willing to lay my life down for them. Do you know what I'm doing when I explode in anger at my children for being irresponsible or for being impolite? You know what I'm doing? I'm taking my children and I'm laying them on an altar to an idol in my life, and I am sacrificing them. That's what I'm doing. Let's think about you for a minute. And I want you to talk to me. Raise your hand so I know where you are. Let's think about a relationship. It could be a friendship. It could be a romantic relationship. But here's the question. How would you know if a relationship that you have has morphed from a good thing to a God thing? I mean, here's the thing. You guys were created for relationship. I was created for relationship. We were created for a relationship with God, and we were created for a relationship with other people. Relationships are good. How do you know, though, if that relationship has morphed from a good thing into an idol? What are your thoughts? Talk to me. Come on.
You're like always obsessing over it.
Oh, yeah. Always obsessing over it. When all you ever think about is a relationship. What else? What might be another clue that a relationship has gone from a good thing to an idol?
You care about them more than you care about God.
When you care about that other person more than you care about God. Excellent. What else?
When you put all your resources into it.
When you put everything you have into that relationship. Okay. What else?
Stop eating, or maybe you start drinking.
Stop eating or start drinking. Interesting. I think I'm guilty of both. What else? Somebody else? What's another? How would you know if a relationship is... Do what?
Feel threatened.
You feel threatened? What do you mean?
Like you're on my turf and you're going to take this.
Oh, yeah. Very possessive, like you own that other person and nobody else can talk to them. Yeah. What else?
When they're all you think about.
Yeah, when they're all you think about.
When you don't know what to do with your life if they leave.
Yeah. When you don't know what to do with your life if they leave. Excellent answers. How about this? When you're willing to compromise your convictions in order to keep that relationship. Another way of knowing that your relationship has gone from a good thing to a God thing. Okay, switch gears. Different example. How would you know if academic achievement has moved from being a good thing to being a God thing? Academic success is a good thing. It can be. I want my kids to do well. I don't want Micah to go to college next year and do poorly. I want her to do well. God's given her gifts. I want her to be responsible with her gifts and use them. But how would I know if her academic achievement had become too important to her? Idolatrous. Cheats. Absolutely. If she cheats, we definitely know there's an issue there. What else? What else might be a clue?
When you have like a meltdown, you get like a bad grade.
Oh, yeah. If you get a B and it crushes you, you find that you can't get out of bed. Yeah, that's a super great way. What else? Yeah. When all you ever do is go to class and study, you don't spend time with the Lord, you don't spend time with people. That's great. What else? Yeah. If like, sometimes you have to push yourself, I get that, but it can become like obsessive, like not taking care of yourself in order to get the grade. That's great. What else? In the college context, I don't know if you see this necessarily in the high school context, but in the college context, one of the ways that you can know if you've made academic success more important than it should be is your unwillingness to help other people in the same class. Or maybe they're not in the same class, but maybe like someone down the hall gets a phone call from their folks and they find out that their parents are getting divorced. If you're not willing to put your books aside and listen to that person, there's probably something going on there. If it's completely impossible for you to rejoice in somebody else's success, say you're taking a class and you get a C on an exam and somebody else gets an A on an exam, and if you just find yourself being bitter and angry and thinking to yourself, how did they get an A? They must have cheated. Blah, blah, blah. You can probably know there's something probably going on there. This is the point of this. Here's the thing. Different people do the same thing for different reasons. Two people can do the same thing. One person is right, one person is wrong. Two people can do the same thing and they can both be wrong and both be doing it for different reasons. Now, think about me and my kids. I want them to be polite, kind, generous, loving, all those things that any parent wants for their kids. But oftentimes those things become idols in my life, and it's evidenced when I get really angry at my family. Why might I get angry at my kids? What's going on in my heart? What idols do you think I might be struggling with when I explode at my kids for being disrespectful, dishonest, cheating, whatever? What idols do you think might be going on there? I'll tell you three things I've thought about with regards to myself. One of the things I really crave is peace. I just want to do what I want to do, when I want to do it, how I want to do it. I want to sit on my couch in my basement and watch the news and not be interrupted. And I tend to explode at my kids in those moments because in those moments my kids, for whatever reason, they always seem to get into a fight with each other. And I find myself sitting in front of my TV screaming up the stairs at my kids, "Shut up!" Yeah, I do. It's wrong. But peace might be what drives me. Another thing that might drive me is other people's opinions. I'm a pastor. I don't want people in my church looking at me, looking at my family, looking at my children and thinking, man, he is a horrible dad, Look at his family. There's no possible, we need to go to another church. I would hate that. I love what other people think of me sometimes, and I would hate that. Other people's opinions are way more important in my life than they should be. Another thing that I've seen in my own life is I have this idol of perfection. I have to be the perfect dad. And when my kids screw up, it crushes me because it reveals I am not a perfect dad. I've not done everything right. Of course, it's insane. Like, they don't have any responsibility for themselves. Of course they do. But perfection twists your brain. And I think when my kids screw up, it crushes me. I don't want to get out of bed. So it could be peace. It could be other people's opinions. It could be perfection. It could be any number of things. Does that make sense? Different people oftentimes do the same thing for different reasons. And what you and I need to begin to do is to think about, why do we do the things we do? What's going on in our hearts? What's driving us? And so what I want to do for the rest of our time is I want to do two things. I want to think about some general questions that might be helpful for you to ask yourself to help you begin to understand what's going on in your heart. And then I want us to think about 4 areas of our lives that are helpful, if we examine them, helpful in helping us understand what's happening in our hearts. The first thing I want to give you are just some questions. And I think some of them might be on your handout. I don't know. I didn't actually look at it this morning. But here's some just general questions that you can ask yourself that can help you begin to understand what you really, really want more than Jesus. And it begins, what do you want? What do you crave? What do you desire? How do you spend your time? What do you like to think about? Very sort of vanilla questions, but questions worth asking. What do you love? What do you get passionate about? What excites you to no end? What would you absolutely hate to happen to you? What disappoints you? What don't you want? What would you miss if it were gone? What do you seek? What do you pursue? What do you aim for? These aren't my questions. These are actually questions written by one of my professors, a guy named David Powelson. If you're interested in thinking more specifically about these kinds of questions, he wrote an article called X-Ray Questions. I think there's bibliographical information on your handout, so there you have it. But these questions are great ways of beginning to find out what makes you tick. Now let's think about 4 specific areas of your life. And the first area in your life that I think is super helpful to pay attention to is your emotional life. How do you feel? You see, our emotions can be amazingly helpful in unearthing the idols of our heart. Now, I do need to make one qualification, and that is this. Every emotion does not always reveal an idol in your life. There are times where sorrow is very appropriate. It doesn't reveal idolatry. But when sorrow leads you to a place where you can't get out of bed in the morning, there's probably something going on there. You want to pay attention to your emotions. Let me give you an example. As you can probably guess, I love music. I buy music. I buy musical instruments. I love to play music. I have a PA system set up in my basement. I love to go down to my basement, turn it up super loud, turn my stereo up super loud, plug in my guitar, and turn it up really loud, and just play until the house shakes. Nobody else in my house likes that, by the way. But I love music. I love the opportunity to come down and play at RYM. I love playing with Steven and the guys. They're amazing, spectacular musicians. It's one of my favorite things to do every year. But here's the thing. There are nights when we walk off that stage up front where I feel pretty good. And then there's most every other night where when I walk off stage, I want to crawl and hide under a rock. I never feel that way when I'm at my house. When I play bass in my basement, I never walk away feeling discouraged or depressed. But there are often times where I walk up that stage where I'm embarrassed to look you in the eye. Why? Because I'm plugged in, and the noise from my instrument you can hear. And sometimes I butcher the bass, and I know you all know it. And it kills me. I'm so unbelievably embarrassed. I'm so humiliated that I want to just run and hide. Another example in my life. I don't think this is quite the case. Well, I probably still struggle with it in a different form, but not as severely. When I graduated from seminary, I took a job at Fort Worth Presbyterian Church, and my job was pastor to families and youth. But on occasion, my senior pastor asked me to preach, which absolutely terrified me. But I had to do it. Isn't that crazy? Like, why would a guy do this if like, is scared to death? But I did. I was terrified. So this is so silly. I would preach a sermon at my church. And then before the benediction, in the last hymn, I would run downstairs and I would hide until every single person in my church had left. Like, I could not look the people in the eye after I preached. I was so scared. I was so embarrassed. I felt so unbelievably exposed. Whether it's playing bass in the Promised Land or whether it was preaching a sermon at Fort Worth Presbyterian Church, I was dealing with the same idol. Can you guess what it was? Come on. You can't hurt my feelings. Approval. I just want people to love me. I just want people to like me. I just want people to think I'm cool. And my emotions, whether it's feeling really, really jacked because I played well, or whether it's being devastated to the point that I don't want to come out of Jacob House down because I can't bear looking you in the eyes. My emotions reveal to me something about myself. They reveal to me what's going on in my heart. They reveal to me what's more important to me than Jesus. They reveal to me the idols of my heart. What all this means is that if you want to expose the idols of your hearts, all you need to do is look at your emotions. I love how Keller puts it in his book, Counterfeit Gods. He says this. He says, look at your most uncontrollable emotions. Just as a fisherman looking for fish knows to go where the water is rolling, look for your idols at the bottom of your most painful emotions, especially those that never seem to lift and that drive you to do things that you know are wrong. If you are angry, ask, is there something here too important to me? Something I must have at all costs. Do the same thing with strong fear or despair or guilt. Ask yourself, am I so scared because something in my life is being threatened that I think is a necessity when it is not? Am I so down on myself because I've lost or failed at something that I think is a necessity when it is not? If you are overworking, driving yourself into the ground with frantic activity, ask yourself, do I feel that I must have this thing to be fulfilled and significant? When you ask questions like that, when you pull your emotions up by the roots, as it were, you will often find your idols clinging to them. Take time and look at your emotions. Look at how you feel. Second area of life is your thought life. What do you think about? You have to think about what you think about if you want to understand what's going on in your heart. Again, to quote Keller, the true God of your heart is what your thoughts effortlessly go to when there's nothing else demanding your attention. If you want to know the idols of your heart, all you have to do is think about how you think. What do you like to daydream about? Where does your mind always go when you have nothing to think about? What do you like to think about when you lay in bed at night, when the lights are off, and you're just about to fall asleep? Where does your mind tend to go? What preoccupies you? And this kind of goes to one of the comments that was made with regards to relationships. How do you know when a relationship is idolatrous? It's when it sort of obsesses you. What preoccupies your thoughts? Golly, I must really... No, I'm just kidding. Here's another thing. My idols are being crushed right now. They're rocking. No. Here's a question. Where do you go on the computer when you have nowhere to go on the computer? Like, is there a place you go on the computer, like, whenever, like, you just have some downtime? On my computer, there's a place. If you know how, like, in Google, you can type www, and then you type some sort of address. When I put that first W, you know what pops up every time? warguitar.com. There's a guitar out there called the War Guitar. It's amazing. And when I have a free moment, nothing to do, I just Google War Guitar. I just type W, and there it is. It's awesome. But it reveals to you what drives me. Now, here's the thing. A couple of years ago, I bought a War Guitar. It's awesome. So now I don't Google War Guitar so much. You know what I Google? MesaBoogie.com. Do you know what Mesa Boogie is? They make amps. Now I want an amp. Think about it. I was thinking about this morning. What does that tell you about me? Well, it tells you I love gear. Like, I love gear. I want to buy every pedal. I want to buy every amp. I want to buy every guitar. But what behind all that stuff, what do I want? I want you to think I'm cool. If I have cool guitars and cool amplifiers and I play well, you will love me. Where do you go? I don't know why I'm telling you all this stuff. I'm just confessions. Where do you go on the computer when you have nowhere to go on the computer? What do you fantasize about? What do you dream about? What scenarios do you play over and over and over in your mind? Either I dread this, the thought of this happening, or I wish so bad that this would happen. Again, these things, how you think, they reveal what's going on in our lives. They reveal what's going on in our hearts. Now, here's one thing. I have to qualify it and say this. Daydreams in and of themselves are not sinful. So please don't hear me saying if you daydream, if right now you're going, man, I wish this was over. I guess that's an idol. No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. You can daydream. Daydream's not always sin. But oftentimes, if you find yourself always going to the same place, it's a question worth asking. What's going on? So you have your emotions, you have your thought life. A third thing to think about is money. How do you spend money? Now, I know what you're thinking. Jeff, I don't have to think about this because I'm a high school student. I don't have any money. But here's the thing. I know you because I have kids. You're thinking about how you would spend money if you had it. Because I watch my kids think about how they would spend their money if they have it. One of the things that Jesus said is where our treasures are, that's where our heart is. Where would you spend money? How would you spend money if you had it? I know you think about it. You think about buying this car. You think about going to that school, whatever. What do you think about? Buying this dress, that pair of shoes. What do you think about? How would you spend money if you had it? That can reveal what's going on in your heart. The last thing is this. emotions, thought life, how you spend your money, and prayer. Now that sounds kind of weird. How can prayer be idolatrous, right? What I'm thinking about here particularly is this idea of, how do you respond when you pray, you ask God for something, and He doesn't give it to you? Do you find yourself crushed? If you do, it's very possible that you have made whatever you're praying about an idol. I must have this or I will die. I must have this or I will not be happy. And if God doesn't give it to me, I'm devastated. So, prayer life, money, thought life, and emotions. All of these provide wonderful windows into our hearts. They are windows into our hearts because they reveal to us what it is or who it is that we love more than Jesus. To quote one of my professors, he said this, what do you really want and expect out of life? What would really make you happy? What would make you an acceptable person? Where do you look for power and success? These questions or similar ones tease out whether we serve God or idols, whether we look for salvation from Christ or from false saviors. I want to conclude with three things. One is this. I gave you a handout. Yes. I'll give it back, I promise. This handout right here. I would encourage you to give this handout a look. This handout can help you, if you're honest and you think about it, it can help you begin to identify things that you struggle with, idols in your heart. I would greatly encourage that. The second thing I would want to say is this. An accurate diagnosis is not the same thing as a cure. I told you at the beginning of our time together that this is just sort of the first step. And that's all it is. An accurate diagnosis is important. If I was still washing my ear out with the bulb, that would not be a good thing. But if I'd never done anything after the doctor told me I had a tumor in my head, that would also not be a good thing. An accurate diagnosis is helpful, but it is not a cure. And so what we're going to do tomorrow is we're going to begin to talk about how do you actually wage war against the idols of your heart. All right? So there's more. The last thing is this. I don't want to be honest with myself. It's scary. It's uncomfortable. It's painful. It's embarrassing. You got a question?
That's an idol too.
Yeah.
Perfection.
Yeah. But here's what I'm trying to get at is this. I get that. That's exactly right. The only way that you will be willing to take a good, hard look at your life and what's going on, the only way that you will be willing to admit about yourself the truth is for you to remember the gospel, for you to remember what Jesus says in Mark 2:17. That Jesus didn't come for righteous folks. He didn't come for people who have all their spiritual ducks in a row. He came for sinful, broken people. He pursues sinful, broken people. He loves sinful, broken people. And He's on a mission. A mission to not only forgive you, but to change you, to transform you into what He created and redeemed you to be. The process on our side of the equation oftentimes looks like self-examination, seeing the crap, and going to Jesus. We're going to talk about going to Jesus tomorrow, but I just want to give you that just so that you would have the incentive to be honest. Let's pray, and we'll come back tomorrow. Jesus, thank you for your word. Thank you for this time. Thank you for these people. Please use our time together to make us more like you. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.